I would like to welcome everybody, and I'm not sure, should we wait for one more minute to see? All right, welcome everybody. We are getting started here. We were just kind of like looking at the attendees. So thank you so much for joining the American College of Surgeons Surgeon-Specific Registry webinar for 2016 CMS Physician Quality Reporting System, or PQRS, for individual measures participation. This presentation today is focusing on the individual measures participation, and we will be providing information on PQRS requirements for this reporting option only. In addition, we will be going over the process of signing up, entering, and submitting measures data for 2016's PQRS. We'd like to mention that the SSR has two other PQRS options available for you for participation for this year. Either the General Surgery Measures Group or the Qualified Clinical Data Registry, or QCDR, for trauma measures. Just keep in mind, if you're interested in the General Surgery Measures Group, there is another webinar that's being hosted on Thursday, December 15th from 5 to 6 p.m. Central Time, or if you know of anybody, please feel free to let them know. Should you have any questions regarding these other options, please contact us following the webinar. Presenting on the webinar today is Mike Bencor, CQI Quality Measures Project Manager, and I am your moderator, Ulrike Langenscheidt, SSR Program Manager. Just some housekeeping rules. All lines will be muted during the presentation. The webinar will be followed by a question and answer session, and we will provide instructions on how to ask a question at that time. If you are participating via telephone, please enter your PIN number so that you may ask a question. If you are participating via mic or speakers, you will need a microphone in order to ask a question. The presentation slides will be made available for your viewing at a later time, in addition to a FAQ document combining all questions. What is the SSR, and why would you use the SSR for PQRS? So the American College of Surgeons Surgeon-Specific Registry, SSR, is an online software application and database that allows surgeons to track their cases and outcomes in a very convenient way, easy to use manner from their computer or mobile devices. With PQRS being in a penalty-only phase now for non-participation or unsuccessful participation, we realized that we really need to help surgeons meet these requirements. And the ACS recognized this need, and to help surgeons participate in an increasing number of regulatory programs for the individual provider. The SSR is a qualified registry and qualified clinical data registry for PQRS 2016 and has incorporated surgical measures for PQRS submission for the individual surgeon. Please note that the group physician reporting option GPRO is not an option available through the SSR. The SSR only focuses on the individual surgeon. To dive in a little bit more into the details of penalties, for 2017, if you did not participate in 2015 in PQRS, you will incur a 2% penalty. If you do not participate in 2016, meaning this year, you will get a penalty incurred on your Medicare Part B in 2018, and that will be a 2% penalty. Please also note the PQRS program in tandem with the EHR incentive program Meaningful Use and the value-based modifier can result in a payment adjustment up to 10% in calendar year 2018, and that will be a negative payment adjustment. For more information on this particular piece, please contact the QualityNet help desk. And you should also note in general that the value-based modifier hinges on PQRS participation. What this means, if you are not participating in PQRS, you will not get credit for the value-based payment modifier. Of course, that is dependent on your group size. But you could incur an even higher negative payment adjustment, just like in this example shown, just because you're not participating in PQRS. So this is really a very important program for you to look at and to participate in. And then Mike will walk us through some of the individual measure reporting details now. Thank you.
Thank you, Uli. So just a little background information on why the SSR is offering individual measure reporting. For those of you that use the SSR to report PQRS 2014, at that time, the SSR offered the PQRS Perioperative Care Measures Group. But in 2015, CMS retired the Perioperative Care Measures Group, and we had to find more options for surgeons to participate for quality reporting. And so we offered the individual measures for 2015, and we are doing the same for 2016. And the basic requirements are as follows. A surgeon must report at least 9 measures, including 1 cross-cutting measure across 3 national quality strategy domains. For each of the 9 measures chosen, a surgeon must report at least 50% of the surgeon's Medicare Part B patients, and this applies to each eligible CPT code within each measure. Of the individual measures being offered through the SSR, there are 43 surgically relevant individual measures, and they are relevant to the following surgical specialties: general abdominal, bariatric, colorectal, vascular, breast, surgical oncology, liver, gallbladder, pancreas, ENT, urology, and rural. Of the 43 measures, there are 10 cross-cutting measures included in that set, and the 43 measures span all 6 NQS domains. Just a brief overview of the NQS domains. We have communication and care coordination, community and population health, effective clinical care, efficiency and cost reduction, patient safety, and person and caregiver-centered experience and outcomes. And now we'll take a brief look at the list of measures being offered through the SSR. We will be offering the slides after the presentation, so don't worry if you don't have a chance to write all this down. You will have this list available to you in the presentation slides. So as you can see here, these are some of the measures that are in the first 2 domains. Some notable measures to maybe take a look at: Measure 46, medication reconciliation post-discharge; 47, care plan; 131, pain assessment and follow-up; 265, biopsy follow-up; and most of the measures offered through the SSR are in the 3rd domain, effective clinical care. And so some more notable measures: breast cancer screening, colorectal cancer screening. More measures in the 3rd domain. We have Measure 412, documentation of signed opioid treatment agreements; 414, evaluation or interview for risk of opioid misuse. And then we have 1 measure in the 4th domain, efficiency and cost reduction, and that is Measure 439, age-appropriate screening colonoscopy. And then the second largest amount of measures for a domain would be the 5th domain, patient safety. And you'll notice, for any of those who are familiar with the Perioperative Care Measures Group, you'll see measures 21, 22, and 23, which were all measures part of the Perioperative Care Measures Group. And so those are also very important measures to take a look at. And then some other notable measures: Measure 130, documentation of current medications in the medical record. That's a very good cross-cutting measure. You have Measure 238, use of high-risk medications in the elderly. And then we have 1 measure in the person and caregiver-centered experience and outcomes domain, and that would be Measure 358, patient-centered surgical risk assessment and communication. And this is a measure that the college authored. Okay, and now we'll be going through the demonstration portion of the webinar, in which we will show you how to enter in your data into the system, review it, and ultimately approve it. And we'll be going through this demonstration as though you already have an SSR account. So if you need registration instructions, we can certainly give those to you. Just let us know. You'll have our contact information, and we'll be able to contact you about that. For those of you that do not have an SSR account, the SSR is free of charge to all ACS surgeon members, and it is available to non-members for an annual subscription fee of $2.99. So you have your username and password for your accounts, and you log in. And you're immediately brought to the View Cases page. And you're going to want to navigate to PQRS. So to do that, hover over the PQRS tab at the top and click on Participation and Submission. And you'll be brought to the PQRS Participation Management page. Consider this page the home page for all things PQRS. This is where you will agree to participate, enter in your data, review your data, and ultimately approve your submission. And the first step here is to consent to the PQRS process. To do so, click on Agree to Participate under the Configuration heading. And you'll be brought to a page with a consent to disclose data agreement. Please read this agreement carefully. It does include some important information, including the CMS mandated annual audits. And that's basically if you participate in any registry, no matter what the institution, you are always agreeing to potentially be selected for an audit because CMS mandates that the registry sample some of the data that was entered into the system. So just be aware of that. And this is also where you'll select your PQRS option. So in this case, we're going to select individual measures. And then you scroll down. And you're going to be asked to input a little bit of information. So, and this is going to be your NPI-TIN combination. For the NPI, it must be your individual surgeon NPI. It cannot be any other NPI that you have. CMS, as an individual reporting provider here, they want your individual surgeon NPI. And just as a measure of security, we're going to ask that you just enter in that number twice to make sure that it is correct. And then for the TIN, it must be the TIN connected to the billing of your Medicare Part B beneficiaries. Again, it cannot be any other TIN. And also, you'll be entering that number in a second time. For the reporting period, don't worry about that field. There is only one reporting period. So once you enter in your NPI and your TIN combination, go ahead and click the Register button. And this will bring you back to the PQRS Participation Management page. And you'll notice that some things have changed here. The first being all of that information you just inputted into the system for your consent is now conveniently located to the left and in a compact view. So you can see your NPI and your TIN, your PQRS option, and should you need to update any of that information, you can do so at any time. Just update it in the appropriate field and then click the Update button there. And if you cancel your participation, you can do so at any time as well. You always have that option to you. So if you wanted to do that, it would cancel your participation. We wouldn't end up submitting data on your behalf. You'll also notice if you look to the right, you have some more options for you to select from. So you have documentation, cases, approval, and submissions. And we'll be going over each of those in more detail as we move throughout the presentation. So the first section is documentation, and in there you'll find some PQRS 2016 resources. The first being a brief overview of PQRS 2016 options available through the SSR. So this includes the individual measures, plus the general surgery measures group and our trauma QCDR. So should you want to maybe take a look at those measures and see if any of those might apply to you, if you want to maybe take a look at those, you can do so. You get a high-level look at the measures, as well as the basic requirements for each of those options. And then you have some PQRS tutorials for entering data into the SSR. Now let's say you're ready to begin entering in your cases for individual measures. There are two ways to access the case form. The first being under the Cases tab in the menu bar is to click Create. The second being to click on Create a New Case under the Cases section. Either way, you'll be brought to a blank case form. And there are a certain number of data variables you will need to enter in for a case form. You don't have to enter all of them, but just there are ones that are, which will be highlighted and you'll have in the presentation slides when we distribute those. So the first being the medical record number, and you must indicate that they're Medicare Part B, because if they're not Medicare Part B, you're not reporting them. You're only reporting Medicare Part B patients here, and for this case to be included as a Medicare case, you must click this field. You'll need the patient's date of birth, patient sex, the procedure date, which must be sometime in 2016, otherwise it is not an eligible case for PQRS 2016 reporting. You'll need the location, your role, and so for the role, you must either be the primary surgeon or the co-surgeon, and this is for PQRS purposes. So again, you can only be the primary surgeon or the co-surgeon for PQRS 2016 reporting purposes. And then for Measure 46, you would need the admit and discharge dates. So depending on the measure, you will be asked to enter in certain data variables, and I'll show you how the system will let you know if there are any unique measures that require unique data variables. Moving on, as you scroll down through the case form, you have a diagnoses and comorbidities section, and in here you might you might need to select an ICD code because some measures do require an eligible ICD code in tandem with an eligible CPT code. So you have a few ways to search for an ICD code. The first being to browse through the hierarchical structure of the code family. The second being to type it in manually, and so you can type in the the numbers and letters of the code and have that pull up any relevant codes, or you can type in the text related to the code and it will pull up, again, any relevant codes for you. For any of you who are current SSR users, the more you enter in ICD codes, the more the system will recognize it and it will store them in a hot list for you. So it'll be a most frequently used list, essentially. And so the more codes you enter, the more you'll be able just to quick select from this list. You also have a nicknames feature, and this feature allows you to take any ICD codes that you know you use on a regular basis and assign them meaningful nicknames for yourself. That way you can easily locate them. You don't have to rely on a hot list to wait for it to appear. So you have those four options to search for an ICD code. Moving on, if it is an emergency procedure, you must check this box. And then you have the procedure section. Again, you have a very similar way of finding the CPT code procedure that you're looking for. So you have the browse feature, the search feature, hot list, and nicknames. And then the last bit of the case form is this section here. And all you need to fill out for this section is the case complete field. This field is very important because this checkbox will indicate to the system that you want this particular case to be included in your PQRS 2016 data submission. So if you don't check this box, this case would not be submitted. So again, it's very important. After you're done with the case, check it as complete so that you can make sure it's included in your PQRS submission. And then once you're done, you have a few ways to save your case. You can click on Save, which will save this out. Will save this case, close it out, and take you back to the PQRS participation management page. Or you can click on Save and New, which will save this case, close it out, and open up a blank new case form for you to continue entering in your data. Now I'm going to show you a brief demonstration of how to enter measures into the system. So because some measures require a certain method and then some require another. So there are essentially two ways to enter a measure into the system. The first being that you enter an eligible CPT code into the procedure section, and custom fields appear with measures, as you can see here. So under this PQRS 2016 individual measures, these four measures appear because I entered in this code 90791. So let's say that I want to answer measure 130. Documentation of current medications in the medical record, a good cross-cutting measure. I would enter in 90791, and then I'd be able to select how I met performance on the measure. So if I met performance, I would just select meets performance. In a similar way, some measures that have dropped out or that have these custom fields that appear will require a follow-up question, so a clarifying question. So, and also some measures, depending on the measures you select, such as measure 265, biopsy follow-up, that may require more than one eligible CPT code. And in this case, it does. So I had to enter code 11100 and code 99201 for measure 265's clarifying question to appear. So it wants me to answer, biopsy was a follow-up for patient previously seen for an office visit. So depending on the measure criteria, that will affect how you can answer the measure. Since it's looking for the answer yes, I will select yes. And when I do that, then measure 265 biopsy follow-up appears and it allows you to actually indicate your performance on the measure. So again, if I wanted to indicate that I met performance on the measure, I would select meets performance. The second way to enter measures data into the system is through the use of what is known as a CPT2 code. So CPT2, some measures have CPT2 codes assigned to various numerator options. So for instance, with measure 226, preventive care and screening, tobacco use, screening and cessation intervention, it requires you enter in first the eligible code for the office visit. So that would be 90791 as an example. And then you would have a corresponding CPT2 code to go along with the numerator options. So I would have to enter in to the procedure section 4004F if I wanted to indicate that I screened the patient for tobacco and they received cessation intervention counseling because I identified them as a current tobacco user. And for this particular measure, you see that there are two options in the performance met category. 4004F is the screen the patient for tobacco, identified them as current tobacco user, gave them cessation counseling. 1036F is you screen them for tobacco, identify them as a current non-tobacco user. But let's say that I didn't meet performance on this measure. You would have to add a modifier to the CPT2 code. So as you can see, if you look at in the table below, for medical performance exclusion, if you wanted to do that option, you'd have to put 4004F with the modifier 1P. And then similarly for performance not met, you would need 4004F with 8P. So let's say that I didn't meet performance on the measure. How do I enter in a modifier? I click on this pencil icon with the green plus symbol on the code that I want to add a modifier to, and then a big list appears. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and at the bottom you will see 4 modifiers that have to do with measure performance reporting. The first being 1P, medical performance exclusion, 2P, patient performance exclusion, 3P, system performance exclusion, and 8P, performance not met. So I would select 8P here, and once I do that, I will then see 4004F with 8P next to it. And when I go check my data in a report that we'll go over soon, you will see that it would mean that I answered the measure accordingly. So let's say that you have entered in all of your data and you want to review it to make sure that it's accurate and that it's complete. There is a very handy report in the system called the Eligible Cases Missing Data Reports. And there are 2 ways to access that. So the first being under the PQRS tab, you could select 2016 eligible cases. The second being you could select view and complete your eligible cases under the cases section here. Either way, you'll be brought to a report. And this report is broken down into 3 sections and gives you varying levels of view of your data. So the first being a very high level view, letting you know whether or not you've met the minimum requirements for individual measure reporting. So have I met the 9 measures? I have not. Have I met the 3 domains? I have not. Have I reported a cross-cutting measure? I have not. So If you have not met the minimum requirements, as you can see here, the numbers are in red text, showing you that you are falling short of the requirements. But once you meet the minimums, those numbers will turn black and the system will allow you to continue. If you scroll further down, you'll see a breakdown report of measure reporting. So any measures that are applicable that you've been reporting on, you can see your performance rates. And this is a crucial piece here, because for performance rates, this is very important. You cannot have a 0% performance rate on a measure that you want to report on, because if you do, CMS will look at your entire data submission, and if they find out of the 9 measures, 1 or more have a 0% performance rate, that's equivalent to reporting less than 9 measures because you didn't report successfully on a measure. So they will automatically deem your submission as unsatisfactory based on that determination. And again, you want as close to 100% performance rate as possible, because you want because lower performance rates can affect the value-based payment modifier. But again, that's dependent on your particular practice and your situation. So if you have any specific questions about that, the PQRS help desk is the source to ask more about what you should do in that situation. And if you scroll further down, you have the final section of the reports. And this is a breakdown of case by case of all the cases you've entered into the system for PQRS 2016 individual measures. And any missing data any critical missing data variables will be highlighted for you in red text. So as you can see here, I'm missing that I've marked the patient as Medicare Part B. And so while these are not critical data variables, because the system will not, while it will know how many measures you're reporting, it will not mark them as red because it doesn't know which measures you would necessarily intend to fully report. So you need to pay attention to this column here, because it will show you whether or not for this case and for this measure I met performance or I didn't report it. So pay attention to that column, because it's not a critical error, but it still is, it's something to pay attention to. And then also, again, marking the case as complete is crucial here. This is what the done column here indicates. So if it's no, it'll be highlighted in red for you. And let's say that you need to now go in and enter the case, or enter the case and edit the data. So it's easy to do that from here. Click on the pencil icon next to the case you want to edit, and this will take you back into the case form where you can continue editing the cases. So once you do so, go in and edit the data, and then you can save it, and it will bring you back to this page where you can continue scrolling down and editing cases as needed. Let's say that you've finished doing that and you are ready to approve your submission. We always recommend that you take a look at one more report just before you do so, and that's the preview submission report available to you in the system. You can find it under the approval section. And again, this will provide you with the high-level view of whether or not you've met the 9 measures, met the 3 domains, and included 1 cross-cutting measure. And then this is also, if you look at the top, you'll see this is where you put in your MPI and your TIN. Just make sure that information is correct before you end up approving your data. For the email address, please make sure it is an email address that you can be easily reached at, or one that you check frequently, because that is how we will communicate with you for time-sensitive information regarding PQRS 2016. So just keep that in mind. And now you're ready to approve your submission. So under the approval section, hover over Approve Submission and click on the link. When you do so, a pop-up window will appear asking you to approve your PQRS 2016 submission and agree to ACS submitting data on your behalf. So check the box that says I approve the submission of my PQRS reports, and then click the Close button. Once you do, this window will close out, and you'll notice a couple things change. First, the Approve Submission link has changed to Cancel Approval, and the submission status under Submissions is now labeled as Pending. So a couple things here. First, should you need to make any changes to your data before the deadline of January 31st, 2017, you can do so. Just cancel your approval first and then reapprove after you've made the changes. And then also, if you feel a need or if you want to cancel your participation at any time, you can do so. This will also do that. If you cancel your approval, we will not submit data to CMS on your behalf. And then for the submission status, this has caused some individuals, some of our users, confusion in the past. Please don't be confused by this. This just indicates that the data is pending on the side of ACS to be sent to CMS. We don't submit data to CMS until about March because the way CMS takes in data is in a single batch. So again, the pending status means that no further action is required on your part. And then Uli will give a little overview of the PQRS 2016 submission timeline.
So for PQRS 2016, you have the time frame of 2016 to sign up for PQRS 2016 and then submit your PQRS data. You will then review your submission reports and also correct any inaccurate data and include any missing incomplete data. Ensure that the required number of measures and criteria have been met, as you just were shown in this demonstration of the system. And then, very important, make sure you approve your submission of PQRS data to submit to CMS no later than January 31st, 2017, because only those where the data is completely entered and also the submission is approved by you in the system, that is the PQRS data that we can actually submit to CMS. So make sure you do not miss this deadline. And the reason also why it's January 31st is, keep in mind also you can, as Mike already mentioned, you can enter your December cases still and then also report on the 30-day outcomes measures accordingly. So this is why we have this deadline. What happens after January 31st? Between February 1st, 2017 and March 31st, 2017, ACS will conduct any applicable risk-adjusted data analysis, and Resilient Software, the vendor we're working with, will prepare the data for submission to CMS. And then the deadline that we have to submit the PQRS data to CMS is March 31st, 2017. And then following that, CMS will also let us know that they accepted the data submission. So what this means is that they confirm that they have received the data that we submitted through our system successfully. What is very important to keep in mind that this does not mean that the performance and the quality of the data has been deemed successful by CMS. That is something that they will review, and at a later time, they will make those results available online. Thank you so much. And
I would just like to add one quick thing. So CMS, when they initially let us know whether or not they have accepted a data submission, usually they reject this data submission based on whether or not a TIN, a taxpayer ID number that has been submitted, is part of an GPRO or an ACO. So just for your own convenience, just check with your practice administrator or your biller just to make sure that you're already not part of one of those, because if you are, then there's a good chance you're already reporting through another means and you don't need to report as an individual.
thank you.
And so if you're wondering what measures might be applicable to you, taking a look at the list is a good way to first identify a measure that might apply to you. But to really know if a measure applies to you, you have to look at the specifications and the eligible CPT codes that apply to a measure. And so when we hand out the slides, you'll have this resource available to you as well. CMS publishes every year their 2016 PQRS individual measure specifications for claims and registry reporting, and you can access that by clicking on this link here. When you do so, you'll be brought to a CMS webpage where you will be scroll to the bottom and click agree. And when you do that, a zip file will automatically begin to download on your computer. Once that zip file downloads, open it up and you'll notice that there are a large amount of PDF files in that zip folder. There's a lot of files. But what CMS has done is, instead of making one gigantic manual, which they've done in the past, they've now parsed out each measure as its own file. That way you can more easily access them. So, and all of the measures are labeled by number, and it's pretty easy to sort through the list. So let's say I wanted to locate measure 226. I would just scroll through the list until I found the file that's labeled 2016 PQRS measure 226.
And then we also would like to let you know, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We will in a moment open up also this webinar for questions, but however, you can also contact us after this webinar. So here is our slide with our contact information for the SSR program. That's under myself and Mark Bancourt. And then also, if you have any issues with your account, you may contact Resilient Software as needed, or if you have any password issue. And also, if you have specific questions regarding the individual measures to use, and you would like to contact the PQRS QualityNet Help Desk, there is also that contact information in this webinar. Please note that we will send you this webinar after we finish, and we will also make this available online. Thank you so much. And we will open up this now for questions.
So again, if you'd like to ask a question, if you're, you can raise your hand on the webinar software, or if you are calling in by phone, enter in the PIN that you received to ask a question. And so we'll be going through the list now.
And we have a few questions here.
Esther Hobbs, I have unmuted your line. Go ahead and ask your question.
I was just wondering if we had to enter all the data for all our Medicare patients.
So it's just going to be 50% of the Medicare Part B patients for each of the 9 measures you choose. So it wouldn't be all Medicare patients, just Medicare Part B and just those for the applicable measures.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any other questions?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Elizabeth Mato, I have unmuted your line. Go ahead and ask your question.
Our surgeon is part of a group.
Yes.
That reports that in the office, but he is an individual surgeon, and we bill for the surgeries, not for the office, but for the surgeries, because the group bills for the office. The office is already reporting on the PQRS for their work, but what about ours for the individual surgery? We got a letter from CMS saying we have to report for the individual.
So, sorry. For the group, are there 2 separate taxpayer ID numbers here?
Yes.
Okay, that's why, because CMS expects you to report for each applicable taxpayer ID number that services Medicare Part B patients for a surgeon. So that would be why you're receiving that penalty most likely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Leigh Gardecki, I have unmuted your line. Do you have a question? Leigh Gardecki, can you hear us? I've unmuted your line. Okay, Leigh, we'll come back to you. We do have a question from one of the participants. Sandra, this is your question. And you're asking, for individual reporting, does the 50% requirement mean that if I see 400 fee-for-service patients that I need to enter at least 200 cases into the SSR? It seems like a lot of entries, whereas Measures Group requires you at least 20 patients. You are correct. So I'm not sure why CMS has these requirements as they are. With the Measures Group, you are correct. It's a very low threshold with the 20 patients. So if you can meet the 20 patients via the General Surgery Measures Group, we highly recommend that, because that is a fixed requirement to meet, versus the individual measures, which is dependent on your patient volume. So yes, if you saw 400 patients for a particular procedure, and depending on the measure you're reporting, you have to report half of those Medicare Part B patients. So you are correct.
Only for the applicable measures.
Yes, only for the applicable measures. So
it might be a little bit less.
It might be a little bit less than that, but it depends on once you go in and start really looking at the specifications, because each measure has multiple CPT codes that you might that might apply to you. Not to mention that when you're reporting this data to CMS, you're not reporting it on a patient basis, you're reporting on an encounter basis. So, for instance, for those cross-cutting measures, for those that because those cross-cutting measures have office visit codes. So whereas a surgery code in a surgery-related measure, that would be a different encounter usually from the day in which you maybe, for instance, screen the patient for tobacco counseling. So you would report those separately. And that's, again, depending on the volume of patients you see, can add up to quite a bit of patient reporting. So again, if you can do the general surgery measures group, we do recommend it. Okay. Dr. Nestor, I've muted your line. Do you have a question? David Nestor, can you hear us? Okay, David, if you have a question, we'll come back to you. Just raise your hands. And Shauna Smith, you ask how many total cases do you have to submit? Again, that is dependent on your patient case volume. Yeah.
I think we already answered this one too.
Tamara Davenport, we've muted your line. Do you have a question? Tamara Davenport, do you have a question? Okay, Tamara, if you have a question, we'll come back to you. Just either raise your hand, or if you want to enter it into if you want to type it in, you can do that, and we'll answer it via the chat box.
Okay, any other questions from anyone?
Unless there are any other questions, I think that we can end a little bit early, give you back some of your time. And again, if you have any other questions, you'll have our contact information when we send out the slides. So just send us an email or give us a call, and we can discuss your questions further with you. So again, thank you very much for participating in today's webinar. And just so you all know, again, we do a webinar tomorrow from 5 to 6 p.m. Central Time for the General Surgery Measures Group. So if you didn't have a chance to attend that one yesterday morning, and you'd like to learn more about that option, you have that option. Just go ahead, and we'll also send out the registration information for that webinar along with the presentation slides. Again, thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.